Welcome. Today is Friday, May 16th, 2025. Today we're diving into a fascinating collection of recent developments spanning the U.S. economy, the fast-paced world of global sports, and some key happenings on the international stage.
Exactly. We'll be extracting the crucial insights from the latest U.S. inflation numbers and then, shifting gears to the roar of Formula One at the Imola Grand Prix.
Go.
We'll also touch on a significant hostage release and much more, all to kind of bring you up to speed on what truly matters.
And it's worth noting that today is Syttende Mai weekend in Wisconsin, a really vibrant celebration of Norway's Constitution Day. It's a great testament to the importance of national heritage.
Mm-hmm.
Plus, a little historical trivia for you. On this very day, back in 1929, the Academy Awards, now, a cornerstone of the film industry, held its very first ceremony.
Wow, didn't know that. Okay, so where should we start? The economy.
Yeah, let's get started with the U.S. economy. Interannual inflation has cooled to 2.3% in April. That's a notable point, the lowest in over 4 years, and it's continuing a 3-month downward trend.
Right. And what's particularly interesting about this moderation is, well, we're seeing the biggest impact. Grocery prices, for instance. They saw their most significant drop since September 2020, falling by 0.4%.
Okay.
And if you drill down even further, egg prices saw a substantial 12.7% decrease. Huge.
Wow, yeah.
Now, while the year-over-year trend is definitely downward, we did see a slight monthly increase, 0.2% from March to April. Small, but it's there.
And when we look at core inflation, that's the rate, excluding those, often volatile food and energy costs. It held steady at 2.8% compared to last year.
Mm-hmm.
This report is especially noteworthy considering that President Trump's tariffs, including the 25% on most steel and aluminum and that broader 10% that took effect in April, well, they're now in play.
Precisely. And what this initial data seems to suggest is that the full impact of these tariffs on what consumers are actually paying, it hasn't fully materialized yet.
Not yet, huh?
Doesn't look like it. We saw a slight dip in clothing prices, actually, and new car prices remain stable. However, furniture costs did see an uptick of 1.5%, so it's kind of a mixed bag at this early stage.
It's important to remember, too, that while some of the earlier really high tariffs on Chinese goods have seen partial reductions through recent agreements, the average U.S. tariff rate is still around 18%.
Yeah, and to put that in perspective, that's significantly higher than before President Trump took office, and, well, it represents the highest levels we've seen in about 90 years. It's quite something.
So why aren't we seeing the full impact just yet?
Well, economists point to a couple of factors. Goods that were already, in transit when the tariffs were implemented were exempt. That's one thing.
Okay.
Additionally, some companies probably anticipated these tariffs and built up inventories, which could be buffering those immediate price increases as they work through the stockpiled goods.
Makes sense. But we are starting to hear from some major companies about how they're responding.
We are. Mattel, the company behind, Barbie and Hot Wheels, they've indicated they'll likely need to raise prices.
Right.
And similarly, giants like Stanley Black & Decker and Procter & Gamble, think Crest, Tide, they've either already increased prices or have plans to do so directly because of these tariffs.
And Mattel makes a lot in China, don't they?
Yeah, it's striking. Around 40% of their products, actually.
So this creates a really complex scenario for the Federal Reserve.
Absolutely. Their main goal is keeping inflation around that 2% target. And while these latest figures show we're getting closer, these tariffs introduce a real dilemma.
How so?
Well, they simultaneously increase the potential for higher inflation down the line, as businesses eventually pass on those costs. But they also raise the risk of higher unemployment if companies have to cut back because of increased costs or maybe reduced demand. It's a very tightrope walk.
And for the average household, the potential financial hit. It's not insignificant.
Yeah. No, the Yale Budget Lab has estimated that these tariffs could ultimately raise prices by about 1.7%. If you translate that, it's roughly $2,800 in additional costs for the typical American household this year.
Oof. Okay, let's switch gears now, maybe head to the racetrack.
Sounds good. Formula One season's in full swing, and the Emilia-Romagna Grand Prix at the legendary Imola circuit is currently underway. Actually, free practice 2 is happening, pretty much as we speak.
Oh, cool. And I heard Aston Martin is bringing some changes.
Yeah, they're making a significant push, bringing some substantial upgrades to Imola. However, at least initially, these new bits will only be on Lance Stroll's car.
Just trolls.
For now. The team's still evaluating whether Fernando Alonso will also get them for this race weekend. A decision is pending on that one.
Okay. And what about the practice sessions so far? Any surprises?
Well, what's particularly noteworthy from FP1, the first session, is that Oscar Piastri of McLaren set the fastest time, so a strong start for them.
McLaren looking quick again.
Yep. And Carlos Sainz Jr. of Ferrari also showed pretty impressive pace on their home turf. Interestingly, Aston Martin used FP1 partly to assess the performance of their rookie driver, Franco Colapinto.
Even Red Bull seems a little worried.
It seems so. Max Verstappen has actually voiced concerns that they might not be able to quickly close the gap to McLaren, who are looking resurgent.
Interesting.
And it's telling that Red Bull is also introducing their own aerodynamic updates at Imola. Suggests they're definitely not standing still. They feel the pressure.
What's the situation with Alpine? I heard Flavio Briatore is involved again.
Yeah, it's an intriguing element. While he can't officially hold the title of director, reports suggest he will still be involved in making key decisions for the team, sort of behind the scenes.
Okay. And Mercedes? Any updates from them?
They're also bringing new parts to Imola, specifically focusing on their front wing and a suspension flap, trying to close that gap to the front runners.
It's not just about the tech, though, is it? There was some controversy about driver radio messages.
That's right. Lewis Hamilton and George Russell of Mercedes have both publicly criticized the FIA's recent measures regarding driver language on the radio. Seems the drivers feel these new restrictions are maybe a bit excessive.
Any driver changes for this race?
Yeah, we'll see a change in the Racing Bulls lineup. That's the old AlphaTauri team. Liam Lawson is stepping in to drive in place of Daniel Ricciardo for Imola.
Okay, Lawson gets another shot.
Yep. And there's also considerable anticipation around the young Italian driver Andrea Kimi Antonelli performing at his home race. Lots of eyes on him.
And Ford is sticking with Red Bull, even if Verstappen leaves.
Seems so. Ford has reiterated its commitment to supporting Red Bull, even with that potential scenario floating around.
Right. And finally, on F1, what's this about Carlos Sainz Sr. and the FIA presidency?
Yeah, within the F1 community, there's definitely growing discussion, and it seems quite a bit of support for Carlos Sainz Sr.'s potential candidacy for the presidency of the FIA, the governing body. Something to watch.
Definitely. Okay, let's turn our attention now to the international arena. Some significant news out of Gaza.
Yes, a very significant development. Hamas has released Israeli-American hostage Eden Alexander. He'd been held since 2023.
That's fantastic news.
It really is. He was handed over safely to the Red Cross and has returned to Israeli forces. Undoubtedly welcome news.
Indeed. In other international news, especially around trade, President Trump made some statements about China.
He did. President Trump stated that China will, quote, open up to U.S. businesses and will suspend existing trade barriers.
Okay, and that coincides with reports of a deal.
Exactly. It lines up with reports suggesting the U.S. and China have reached a tentative agreement to reduce tariffs temporarily.
But not everyone sees it the same way.
No, definitely not. It's important to note the different perspectives. Senate Majority Leader Chuck Schumer offered the opinion that China, quote, got the better of Trump in these negotiations. But, on the other hand, the White House issued a fact sheet characterizing this agreement as a historic trade win for the United States. So it really highlights the complexities and, well, the often differing interpretations around these big international trade deals.
Sure does. Any other global headlines?
Yeah, a couple of things. Pope Leo XIV held his first press conference and reaffirmed the importance of the gift of free speech.
Okay.
And back in the U.S., a federal judge has approved applying the Foreign Enemies Act to help deport members of the Tren de Aragua criminal organization.
Right, and closer to home, specifically Wisconsin.
On a more local political note, Senator Ratcliffe successfully passed a resolution recognizing Sitend Mai Constitution Day across Wisconsin from today, May 16th through the 18th. It celebrates the valuable contributions of Norwegian Americans to the state.
Nice tie-in to the start of our deep dive. Okay, let's shift focus to the hardwood. NBA playoffs are heating up.
Oh, yeah, delivering some intense action. The Denver Nuggets, they managed to stave off elimination with a crucial Game 6 win over OKC Thunder.
Forcing Game 7.
Exactly, forcing a decisive Game 7. Jamal Murray's performance was absolutely key for Denver.
But maybe some bad news, too. Aaron Gordon.
Yeah, there is some concern floating around about a potential injury to Aaron Gordon, something to keep an eye on heading into Game 7.
Definitely. And elsewhere in the West.
Well, we've seen the Minnesota Timberwolves clinch their spot in the Western Conference Finals. They eliminated the Golden State Warriors.
A big win for them. And in the East.
The Boston Celtics also secured a win against the New York Knicks, pushing their series to a Game 7 as well. Luke Cornett actually had a standout game for the Celtics in that victory.
Wow, 2 Game 7s. Okay, looking ahead, any trade rumors swirling?
Always. The Houston Rockets are reportedly formulating a trade offer for Giannis Antetokounmpo. That's a big one.
Whoa.
Meanwhile, Josh Giddey of the Chicago Bulls is apparently seeking a contract extension similar to the one Jalen Suggs just got. And the Toronto Raptors seem optimistic about the upcoming NBA draft. They hold the 9th overall pick.
Lots happening there. Okay, let's move to the gridiron. NFL news.
Yeah, the schedule's starting to take shape. We now know the Dallas Cowboys are set to host the Kansas City Chiefs on Thanksgiving Day. That's a classic matchup.
Always a big game.
For sure. We also learned recently that Tom Brady finally revealed his primary reason for deciding to leave the New England Patriots all those years ago.
The big reveal. And lots of QB movement recently.
A ton. The New York Giants signed veteran QB Russell Wilson. It's a one-year deal worth $21 million.
Okay.
The Buffalo Bills bolstered their defense, signing Pro Bowler Joey Bosa for the 2025-26 season.
Big signing for the Bills D.
Yep. The New York Jets added QB depth, signing Justin Fields as a backup for Aaron Rodgers. And the Seattle Seahawks made a substantial investment at QB, signing Sam Darnold to a $100.5 million contract.
Wow, big money for Darnold. What about Travis Kelce?
Good news for Chiefs fans. Travis Kelce announced he will return for the 2025-26 season, putting any retirement speculation firmly to rest.
Okay, but still questions around Aaron Rodgers' future with the Jets.
Yeah, it seems the Jets are still in the process of determining the future role and status of their star quarterback, Aaron Rodgers. Still some uncertainty there.
All right, finally, let's touch on the world of mixed martial arts, UFC.
Yeah, Michael Morales is getting some spotlight ahead of UFC Vegas 106. He's been talking about his upcoming fight and what it means to represent his home country, Ecuador.
Good for him.
UFC fans are also getting treated to highlights of Gilbert Burns' top 5 career performances. And a past thriller between Mateusz Gamrot and Rafael Fiziev is being revisited as an instant classic.
Nice. Any big fights coming up?
Yep, looking ahead on the calendar, UFC 317 is slated to feature a huge title fight. Ilia Topuria versus Charles Oliveira. That should be fireworks.
Definitely one to watch. And briefly, any updates on the immigration front?
A couple of items. Authorities in Florida arrested a Jamaican citizen for allegedly falsely claiming U.S. citizenship to try and register to vote in the 2024 presidential primaries. And USCIS, the immigration agency, is involved in investigating a Cuban national accused of credit card theft and also lying on his naturalization application. And as always, USCIS continues to provide important updates and info through their official channels.
Right. So wrapping this all up,
Yep.
what does this mean for you, our listener? We've seen a cooling trend in U.S. inflation. Despite those new tariffs kicking in, we've got exciting developments in Formula One with teams scrambling for upgrades.
Yeah, and significant shifts in international trade talks, plus really compelling playoff battles and player movements across, well, pretty much all the major pro sports leagues.
It really highlights the interconnected nature of global economics, high-stakes sports, evolving international dynamics. It all continues to shape the world around us in pretty significant ways.
Absolutely. It might be worth considering the potential long-term consequences of these tariff policies on the prices, you actually pay for goods.
And think about the strategic chess match Formula One teams are playing right now to gain that tiny edge.
Right. And also maybe take a moment to reflect on the human element in these big global events, like as powerfully illustrated by that recent hostage release we talked about.
Yeah, absolutely. This deep dive has really just offered a snapshot of these complex and constantly unfolding stories.
For sure. We'd encourage you to delve deeper into the developments that pique your interest and really consider how these events might influence your own understanding of the world.
Thank you for diving deep with us this week.
Yeah, thanks for joining us.
We'll catch you next time.